Just before we go into today's show, today's episode is sponsored by the Mystery Football Kit Co.
So the guys over at Mystery Football Kit Co have reached out to us and happily agreed to sponsor the podcast and support us as a small business ourselves. They are Leeds fans, and what they are offering is a Mystery Football Kit Box. And if you're not sure what a Mystery Football Kit Box is, it's the opportunity to get your hands on a shirt you might not have got before. It's from any team, from any time, including this season as well, all over the globe.
All you have to do is select your size on their website, as well as any kits or colours you don't want to feature in your mystery box. So obviously you'll be selecting no red kits in that category straight away. And your very own mystery shirt will arrive on your doorstep, and you won't know what kit you've received until you open up.
All of their shirts are handpicked to each order, and every item is of high quality, and I must emphasise as well, genuine, brand new football shirt from either this year or any previous year from any club around the world.
And because of our partnership, as well as the fact that we like to look out for our listeners, if you enter the code LUFCFANZONE at checkout, you'll receive 10% off your order. So make sure you head over to Mystery Football Kit Co on Instagram or www.mysteryfootballkitco.com to check them out, and make sure you add the discount code LUFCFANZONE at checkout. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of LUFC Fanzone's Agent Talk. I'm Sam Isles.
And I'm Jack Ellis.
And previously on our LUFC Fanzone podcast, we've been joined by a former player or manager to speak about their career at Leeds United. However, during this summer's transfer window, we'll be bringing you all the latest Leeds United transfer gossip, bringing you weekly exclusives straight from player agents and giving you their word on a potential transfer to Ellen Road. Our agent exclusives will be gathered directly by ourselves as opposed to getting them from another source elsewhere, and we'll attempt to gain you a word from every player's agent that Leeds are linked with this summer. But as I'm sure you'll understand, some agents prove harder to get in contact than others. As well as the exclusives, we're joined every week by former Opta analyst and Leeds United fan Martin Riley to gain an insight as to what sort of player Leeds are being linked with. And Martin will use data that he's gained from watching the player in question to give his opinion as to what sort of player Leeds are looking at. Martin, how are you, mate?
I'm doing fantastic. After last night, it would take quite a lot to bring down my mood.
So, obviously last week was episode 1 of the show, and we basically gave you a summary of the players that Leeds have been linked with over the past month or so, basically since the Premier League season had finished, and gave you comments from the players' agents related to the possible transfer. But in this episode and in future weeks, we'll be focusing on the weekly rumours, so obviously still getting the agents exclusive and their reaction to the speculation, but understandably, there may be less players mentioned in the show compared to the previous episode. However, there was someone that we mentioned on last week's show that has been made official since the show was released, which of course is Junior Firpo's arrival from Barcelona, which is exactly what our source close to the player told us on Tuesday of last week, 1 week before the deal was confirmed by Leeds United. He was very specific in telling us that he didn't want to be named when we were releasing this show and his quotes. However, the person that we were getting them comments from and the ones that we've been releasing on social media, on our Twitter and our Instagram over the past weeks wasn't his agent, but it was someone who is very close to the player. And he's even been with him in England and travelled over from Spain to Leeds with him, which shows the sort of people that we are getting in contact with to get you these quotes. Just reiterating what he told us, and he said that the move to Leeds would cost 15 million euros, which is something that has been released and confirmed by Barcelona. And of course, it would be a straight purchase option as opposed to a loan, which was going round the reports during the time of when he was giving that information. Of course, again, that proved to be spot on. And he also told us on the Tuesday before Junior signed for Leeds that the transfer had been confirmed within the week, which again was spot on because Leeds did confirm that transfer exactly a week after he gave us that information. And that Leeds and Barcelona had been negotiating the deal for, if not weeks, months, which shows that Leeds are doing well to keep the negotiations under wraps because the information didn't get leaked and didn't get told to us before the deal was basically confirmed and just needed the last signature on the dotted line from Firpo to actually be in Leeds to confirm it. But now Junior has been confirmed, Martin. What more can you tell us about the player that Leeds have signed? Because obviously you touched on him last week, but now it's official. What more can you add to what you told us last week?
Well, Sam, Junior is an attacking fullback by nature. He likes to run with the ball at his feet, and he is very good at it. He has elite physical attributes, mainly for his pace, but he is quite strong too. Going forward, I notice he likes to put runs in behind the and his timing is good, so he isn't often caught offside, which is something we quite often did see from Alioski. His defensive positioning could do with some work, but his attacking strengths outweigh any defensive deficiencies, in my opinion. Lastly, one thing I've noticed, which could be a real weapon for us, are his lower crosses. He's very dangerous when he gets to the byline and puts in a low, hard cross. It seems to put them into good areas with the right amount of pace on the ball, and that's the kind of delivery which we don't really have anyone to do. Jack Harrison likes to cross them in a pretty standard winger in the air. Sometimes he does get to the byline and put them in, but it's not something which we have players who can do it. Rafinha can do it on occasion, but he more likes to attack and pass rather than cross. So yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a good signing for us.
Yeah, and in my opinion as well, I feel that it's great that Leeds have found a left back so early in the transfer window, because for me, even if Gianni Alioski would have stayed at Leeds, which we'll touch on in a second, Leeds did need a left back, and it was a priority that a left back needed to come to the club. But how important do you think that's been for you, Jack? Because Leeds did need, like I mentioned, a top quality left back, and to get that so early in the window is, for me, one of the best bits of business that we could have done so early in this transfer window.
Well, yeah, it goes without saying that the earlier you do a transfer, the more time you have to settle into the club, the surroundings and the style of play, and I think that's more important with Bielsa than probably any other manager in the league. Junior's, from what I've seen of him, limited clips, he looks fantastic. He's attacking, and I think that suits right into Bielsa's plans. Obviously, sad to see Alioski go. Fantastic servant to the club, and I wish him well wherever he goes. But I think now, I think I'd be right in saying that Firpo's a step up in quality and in experience for what he's experienced at Barcelona. Having Champions League football under his belt is a great addition to any Leeds United side. So, looking forward to seeing him play.
Yeah, and of course it was one left back in with Firpo and one sort of left back out for Leeds. And I say that because, of course, Gianni started as a winger at Leeds, but Bielsa moulded him into a left back over the past couple of seasons. And it's now been confirmed that Gianni will be departing Leeds after failing to sign a new contract, which I always thought was going to be the case ever since the rumours began linking him with a move away at the free transfer in January. But it has now been confirmed, and I've been in contact with Alioski's agent about where he might be going to next, but he did refuse to comment on that. But in the Turkish media, they seem pretty convinced that he will be going to a Turkish Super League club next year. But even they're not sure at this stage what club, because there have been quite a few different ones linked. And even in the last couple of games, Roma have joined the list of clubs that are wanting Alioski. But what do you think about Alioski's departure from Leeds, Jack? Both as a player and as well his off-field antics, which of course were one of the highlights to some of the media clips at Leeds, shall we say?
Yeah, I think Alioski's one of them people who's a big personality around the changing room. I don't feel like you have to be in the changing room to really know that. I think, like I said before, wherever he goes, I would wish him the best of luck. As long as he doesn't go Galatasaray. I know people's got split opinions about him going to Galatasaray, but I don't think that's really on the cards at this point. I think it's more, is it Trabzonspor, like you said, I think Napoli are in the race as well, Roma and Milan more recently, a few Italian teams. So, yeah, wherever he goes, he'll always have a place in Leeds fans' heart, no doubt. Being one of them players who took us up back to the Premier League, he'll be a legend forever, and he'll never have to buy a pint in Leeds.
And as more of an analytical point of view, Martin, what do you think that Leeds will be missing now that Gianni has left? Or should I say, what did he offer to the side that they hope that Junior Firpo will be able to replicate at Leeds?
Well, from a stats point of view, Alioski didn't have many, what you'd say, standout stats. He was good at a lot of things, but he was average at others. But one thing he did stand out for, which probably won't surprise you, being in the Bielsa side, is pressures and tackles. When compared to other fullbacks in the top 5 leagues, he was in the 99th percentile. I'm not sure if you know how percentiles work. That basically means that there is only 1% or less players who are better in that area than what Gianni was. And that's with 19.5 pressures. And tackles, he was in the 90th percentile, so not quite as good as his pressures, but he's still very strong. And he had 3 tackles per 90 for that. Alioski's work rate will be difficult to replace. But I found out that Junior was often in the top end of Barcelona's physical tests, which means he should be able to replicate this output when he's more familiar with Bielsa's systems and he's got a couple of murder ball sessions behind him. Firpo should be able to offer the same things going forward that Alioski did. But especially when it comes to ball carrying, he's definitely an upgrade over Alioski. He puts out more carries and progressive carries per 90 than Alioski did. And lastly, something Junior should offer is an extra aerial presence for set pieces. It's not something you'd ever think of for a left back, but he's 6 foot tall, so that's a pretty decent height for a left back. Gianni was only 5'9", so it's quite a big difference. And he uses his height quite well too. He wins 56% of his aerial duels, and at some point last season we did have problems with set pieces, so that could be a little useful bonus. Although I'm sure that isn't something we should be signed him for.
Yeah, and just moving on from Junior Firpo and back to the weekly transfer rumours, because this week Leeds had again been strongly linked with a move for Hertha Berlin's attacking midfielder Matheus Cunha. And because of the links, we exclusively spoke to his agent, who told us that he had already spoke with Victor Orta about the possibility of the transfer to Leeds, and that he'd met Victor just last month, but he does believe that a move to Leeds is unlikely this summer. Cunha's agent told us that I'm not sure if Leeds see Matheus as a priority. If he's not a priority, then I don't want him to go to the club. We want a club that believes in him and understands his potential. We'd rather wait a year for a club to arrive who see him as a key figure, especially after the Olympics. I do not know Leeds' financial situation, but the deal wouldn't be cheap. Between 35 and 30 million euros. I think very highly of Victor Orta and, of course, Bielsa, and we believe in Leeds' project. But in 2 years, Matheus will be a top player, and he wants to be a key figure in a team. Now, although Cunha's agent told us that he doesn't believe a move to Ellen Road will happen this summer, he did tell us that he had spoke with Victor Orta, which shows that he must be some sort of interest to Leeds for that to happen. So, because of that, Martin, what sort of player is Matheus Cunha, and why is he a player that interests Leeds?
Well, Matheus ticks a lot of boxes for a Bielsa attacker. He's very versatile, being more than capable of playing as a winger on both sides, attacking midfielder or centre-forward. Across his career, he's played more tech games as a centre-forward, actually. But more recently, last season, he's played a lot as a left-sided winger for Hertha Berlin. I would actually say he's better used as a left-sided winger, and the stats back this up. He averages 0.59 goal contribution per 90 as a left winger and 0.47 per 90 as a centre-forward. May not sound like a big difference, but yeah, it is quite a lot over the course of the season. And also, interestingly, he actually scores more goals per 90 as a left winger than what he does as a striker. He gets 0.36 goals per 90 when he's left winger and 0.28 as a striker. So it says that he uses the wide spaces very well. I'd say he's pretty much what you'd expect from a Brazilian attacker. He likes to run at defences a lot. In fact, he does so more than Rafinha does, and with a greater success rate, which is quite something. And also, the numbers themselves are good. Even when Rafinha was in Stade Rennais in the French leagues, he still wasn't putting out as many dribbles as what Matheus is. So that's definitely something to be lauded. And most people would agree that the Bundesliga is a better quality of league than the French league as well. I could talk a lot more about him, but I'll just end on his defensive output, which is frankly incredible, which definitely isn't the norm for a Brazilian attacker. He puts out 23 pressures per 90 and 2.5 tackles and interception per 90. So this is definitely one of the reasons why he's been drawn to Bielsa. I think he must have a high work rate himself and sees that he could do well for Leeds. And so that's also what's drawn Victor Orta and Bielsa's interest.
One thing that Cunha's agent also mentioned, which I thought was quite interesting, was the player's price, which he said would be between 30 and 35 million euros, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be a similar figure to what Udinese wanted from Leeds for Rodrigo de Paul last season. And they both play in a similar position and they both have a similar price. And it seems that Leeds won't be getting either of them despite being interested in both. So do you think it's a price that is potentially putting Leeds off these sort of players, Jack? Because obviously 35 million euros is a lot of money. And if Leeds were to pay that amount for Cunha, it'd break our transfer record.
Yeah, I think it's evident
across this season, well, I say this season, the Firpo transfer and last year, that our transfer plan is to get good players at a good value. And I feel like if we're not in a market, or maybe not in a position, maybe financially we are, but we just don't want to. I don't feel like we want to go out and pay premiums on a player who we feel like we can get an alternative replacement for at a cheaper price, which makes sense. But obviously, you hear these names linked like Cunha, who's a player I've known about for a while in the Bundesliga, who's done fantastically well over there. So, you know, it's ultimately it's about results, isn't it? And if you get the same player for a fraction of the price, then you know that's just good scouting. I don't see any negatives in it really. And like I said last episode, ultimately I think Hertha and Bielsa know best when it comes to transfers. And if there's a reason why we're not willing to pay out 35 million for him, then you know it must be a good enough reason.
Yeah, and do you think that based on what you've seen, Martin, in the current transfer market, that 35 million euros for Cunha is a fair price for him?
Most definitely. We could say we paid half of that for Rafinha, and why can't we do similar for Cunha? But firstly, we have to say the financial situation in France is totally different to Germany. The French clubs have been hit very hard and lost big chunks of TV money due to substantial issues with the broadcasters, and they've changed broadcasters twice in the last 18 months, which has impacted the clubs over there heavily. And Matheus signed for her for 18 months ago, which is less time than Rafinha had been at Rennes as well. So they will expect a sharp increase on the 16 million that they paid for him. And that's 16 million pounds, not euros. So that would be a little bit higher than that, around about the 18 million mark. So if also you've got to point out that if we were to sell Rafinha, I'm sure we wouldn't accept less than 30 million. And most of us would probably say around 50 million for Rafinha. I mean, I realise Rafinha now has Premier League experience, which is the top division in the world for most people. But you still got to say the Bundesliga isn't too far away. There were a lot of players in the Euros this year who have stood out of being from the Bundesliga. It just shows that the quality there isn't as bad as some people think it is. Some people have a bit of a closed-mind view of different leagues other than England. It's definitely worth the money which they're asking for him. He's still only young. He's only 22. I think he's just turned 23. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's definitely worth what they're asking for.
And even though if he might be worth that amount of money, Jack, do you think that part of the reason for not spending that amount of money on an attacking midfielder is because Bielsa might feel that position, the attacking midfielder position, isn't really a priority? Because in this current Leeds squad, there is a number of players who can play in that number 10 role behind the striker.
Yeah, but at the same time, I can't see why they'd go after a player of that value in that position if they didn't feel it was necessary, if that makes sense. Like you said, I agree with you there. I think there's a lot of players who could fill in that role and do it to a fantastic standard. But I think, don't get me wrong, if we sign Cunha, I'd be absolutely over the moon. I think he's a fantastic player. But whether it's what we need and the money could go elsewhere, I'd rather see money go elsewhere, to be fair. Like I said before, we've got players who can fill in that position and do a job there, so I can't see why we'd need to go out and get an attacking midfielder. If you were to ask me what position I'd get, I'd probably go for a more central midfielder. Not for a replacement of anyone, but I just feel like we're just lacking a little bit of squad depth there.
Yeah, it's a great point. We have a lot of strong options in the wide areas. We've got Jack Harrison on the left, who has had a phenomenal first year. And as we know from Harrison, he pretty much always improves year upon year. So I'm excited to see what he does next year. So I don't think we'd want to risk a large amount of money in an area where we have a lot of strength. I mean, I know Matheus is a versatile player. He cannot not just wing, he can play behind the striker and as a striker himself. So it would be a good amount of money, but it's whether we see the need to spend more in a different area of the pitch. And I personally agree with Jack that we could do another option in central midfield more than we'd need further up the pitch. Because we did have issues like last season when some players were either banned or injured, which did mean us playing players which maybe we could do better. I mean, I like Tyler Roberts. I do think he's a good quality player and he's got potential to improve. but I do think that we should be looking at an improvement there. And last year we didn't want to risk a large amount of money on Rodrigo de Paul. So as much as I'd love Cunha to join, I don't think he will for that fee. I don't think we're wanting to spend that much on one individual player, and that we'd rather get a couple of signings for that amount of money like we did last year. Because last year we could have stumped out 30-40 million on Ben White, and instead we got a German international and a Spanish international for the same price. So it's definitely that we're looking more to sign quantity and quality at the same time, like looking for the right options in the transfer window, which is what they keep saying all the time, is that they want the right player at the right price. They don't want to pay over the odds.
Staying with the first team, there's been a few other names linked and doing the rounds this week regarding a transfer to Leeds, and one of the main ones was Huddersfield's Lewis O'Brien. So as always, we reached out to his agent, who coincidentally is former Leeds United defender Kevin Sharp, and he's also Calvin Phillips' agent. But Kevin Sharp told us that there'd been no interest from Leeds United, although there had been some approaches from some other Premier League teams, but not Leeds. And he was suggesting that that deal was just media speculation. And as well this week, there's been a couple of other wingers that have been linked to Leeds, such as PSV's Noni Madueke and Sampdoria's Mikael Damsgaard, who coincidentally scored against England on Wednesday night from that free kick. And we did manage to reach out to both their representatives. However, neither of them wanted to give us any information on that potential transfer. So we'll have to see if either of them progress over the next few weeks. We also got back in contact with Noah Lang's agent to see if he was able to give us any update on the move to Leeds. But he told us that within the week that we contacted him, there'd been no advancements, and sticking with his initial words saying how it's too early to comment on the speculation at this stage, and that he prefers to not say anything and would rather be patient about that potential transfer. Moving on from the first team, because Leeds have finally got their man for the under-23 side. Wigan youngster Sean McGurk has finally been confirmed as a Leeds player, and it's reported that the deal will cost around £200,000. McGurk has been linked with a move to Leeds for well over a year, potentially even 2 seasons, and he's the second youngster this season who's joined the under-23s team, following Amari Miller's move from Birmingham. But what can you tell us about McGurk, Martin? Because, like I mentioned before, he's someone who's been on Leeds' radar for such a long time now.
Well, I've not been able to find a lot of footage on McGurk, because being that he's played most of his football for Wigan under-18s and under-23s. However, what I did find that is quite promising. He plays as a winger or as a number 10, and he does score quite a lot of goals from a midfielder. Last season, he scored 15 goals in 25 games for Wigan's under-18s, and he also got 2 goals in 3 games for the under-23s. And in the last 2 seasons, he scored a combined 35 goals in their under-18 side. So it's not just one season where he scored a lot, he's scored in two consecutive seasons. He looks very comfortable, but using both his feet, which is always a positive for an attacking player. He likes to dribble past players, but he can be muscled off the ball by defenders who are stronger. This is something that he will improve on. He's still quite young, and one thing a lot of our young players seem to do is work in the gym a lot. We've seen quite a few of them recently bulked up over the summer, especially Ian, and a lot of Marcel value strength and pace in his attacking players, because usually with strength and pace you generally do get stamina as well, and that stamina always helps out for an attacker. I think he'll be a great addition to the under-23s. We've already got a massive amount of talent in our under-23 side. They walked the league last season, and I'm interested to see what he can do when he's got Joe Gelhardt and Greenwood alongside him too. It's going to be a dangerous team for the Premier League Division 2.
Yeah, like you mentioned, last year the under-23s team convincingly won the Premier League 2 second division. And last season as well, there was a lot of new arrivals in that side, with Cody Drameh, Sam Greenwood, Crescencio Somerville, and McGurk's former Wigan teammate, Joe Gelhardt, who you just mentioned. And it seems again that Leeds will be spending more money on further improving that side, which can only be a good thing, can't it, Jack? Especially for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the team from last year got convincingly promoted, in your words, to the Premier League 2 Division 1, which is obviously the top level of under-23 football in the country. It wasn't like something in the last game of the season. I think we won it with about 4 games left or something daft like that, which goes to show how good that team was in that league. And And I think with the purchases we made last season as well, you can only take that confidence into the players we bought this season, because I cannot name a single player for the under-23s who's, let's say, flopped. Everyone who I've seen who's come in and I've watched for the under-23s have just been phenomenal. It'd be interesting to see if any of the under-23s take that step up as well into the first team, because there's a few you could probably think of who were there or thereabouts. Obviously, Greenwood, and did Gelhardt feature in the FA Cup as well? I think Greenwood did. I know Greenwood did, but I don't think Gelhardt did he?
I think he got in the squads, didn't he? But I don't think he actually played any minutes.
Yeah, so like I say, it'd be interesting to see if any of them get the opportunity to go one up and hopefully make the Premier League debut, because they're there. They're thereabouts. Maybe not Premier League debut, but definitely getting the cup marks. Obviously, that Crawley game is something we don't really want to talk about, and more opportunities like that, I think, because a few of them players are phenomenal. And I think, was it Greenwood and Gelhardt were joint top goal scorers for the league? Which, that says it all, really, don't it? So, in the words of Adam Forshaw, we ramped it.
But on the flip side, the influx of new players into the 23s has meant that obviously some are going to have to depart the club. And we've already seen Oliver Casey leave for Blackpool in this transfer window. And it's also expected that Robbie Gotts and Niall Huggins are also set to leave the club on permanent transfers, which is a shame because they're all local lads and they've all grown up with each other in Leeds' academy. But I guess that's just the harsh reality of professional football, where Leeds are bringing in these players, and the players that have been here from such a young age are being forced to leave the club.
Yeah, I think that is probably the best way to put it. Like Robbie Gotts, I think he had God knows how many appearances on the bench before he made his debut. Niall Huggins played fantastic against Arsenal. Arguably my man of the match. Obviously a disappointing game to lose, but I think he came on, he was fantastic. So yeah, that's just football, isn't it, really? Unfortunately, that's just the way the business is. It's if you can't make the cut in Bielsa's eyes, then you get moved on, and it's just a carousel, really. It's probably a bit of a negative way to look at it, but ultimately, I think at this level, you can't afford to keep any players who you don't think will be able to make the cut. Especially with Bielsa liking a small squad, I think it's harder than ever to break into the first team.
Sticking with departures from Leeds, and earlier this week we managed to get an update on Kiko Casilla's future at Leeds. And on Wednesday, his agent exclusively told us that Kiko is set to leave Leeds on loan and return to Spain, and that he wouldn't be a part for Leeds' squad for the upcoming Premier League season. His agent told us that Kiko loves the club, and I saw him really happy there in the past, but he needs to play regular football. Ilan is doing very well for Leeds, which makes this not possible, so now it's time to move on. His agent also told us that at this moment in time, Kiko is in England. However, he isn't training with Leeds, and on either Monday or Tuesday, he'll be flying out to Spain to complete his loan move to a La Liga club, a team which is yet to be decided, because he did tell us that there are a number of clubs interested in signing Kiko. He has been at the club since January 2019 and he's made 56 appearances for Leeds United. But do you feel it is a perfect time now for him to move on, Martin, and return to his homeland, even if it is on loan, because he does still have 2 years left in his contract? So after this loan, he will still have another 12 months left on his Leeds United deal.
I do think it would probably be a good time for Kiko to move back home to Spain. He's been a bit of a decisive figure amongst the Elland Road fan base. There's some of our fans who are sticking by him in the same sort of manner that Bielsa has, and saying that he's served his time for the racism charge and that he should be able to continue playing for us if Leeds and Bielsa are happy with doing that. But there's also a lot of fans who say that what he did was unforgivable. So it's something which I think is the right time for it to happen now. He's had some good moments for us. I'm not going to say that he hasn't, but he's also had a lot of bad moments. Not just the charge for racism. He's cost us games. He's cost us points. That's about all I could say on Casilla, to be honest. It's probably his time to move on and go back to Spain. Yeah.
Do you feel the same, Jack?
Yeah, I do. I think obviously now Elan's playing so well, it kind of makes that move easier for Kiko in a way that there's no question to whether he starts. Not like there really was beforehand, but I feel like obviously now Elon's arguably one of the best young goalkeepers in the world. You can't see Kiko getting a chance again. I think that's basically just dead out now. So yeah, I think that makes the move easier for him. Like I said, I don't really want to go into the incidental side of it, but you've got to factor in both things. He's won his points, crucial saves, but at the same time he's lost his points, like Martin obviously said. So yeah, I think it's one of them things where you just part ways and just leave it at that, really. I'm sure he'll move elsewhere and start to rebuild his career, because I think he's still got a few years left. I believe he's early 30s, right? So he's still got a few years left for a goalkeeper. So yeah, just part ways and then just leave it at that, and we move forward. He does his own path and cross it off as something which didn't work out.
Yeah, and Kiko's explained to us that he'll be returned to Spain on a 1-year loan, like we mentioned, and there's a number of clubs interested in signing him. But he hasn't told us so far which club he will end up at, but he did say that he will update us. So by the time this episode has been released and is live, we would have updated you, hopefully, where Kiko will spend next year on loan. But that brings an end to episode 2 of LUFC Fanzone's Agent Talk. Thank you so much to Martin Riley for joining us, and we'll be back again next week with more agent exclusive based on the week's rumours, as well as expert analysis from Martin. And of course, you can follow him over on Twitter at MartinCBM Riley for all of his Leeds United analytics. And just lastly, if you think there's a player that we've missed off this week's episode, or if you see Leeds linked with a player before next week's episode, send us a DM over on our LUFC fans on Instagram or Twitter, and we'll try and get a word from that player's agent for our next week's episode.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.